I took your advice, and now I lay banished on the floor of shame, with nothing to do but plot my revenge against you.
Whoa, lighten up, big guy.
I'm so excited to be here chatting about Knuckles. I watched it all in one sitting because I was just so hooked on it. I was laughing all throughout. So obviously, you know, the franchise started with the first movie, but when did the talks of a spinoff first come about for any character, let alone Knuckles?
Well, I think one of the fun things about making the Sonic movies is that even going back to the first one and the cameo that we had from Tails at the end, we knew there was this incredible cast of characters that we had, you know, and I think they're from the very beginning, even on Sonic 1, we talked about, should we put them all in the first movie? And we made the active decision to not do that and to kind of slow play rolling them out, specifically because I think we wanted to make sure that we told that we introduced each of the characters in an organic way and got to tell a real story that lets you relate and really understand who that character was. So we've been very lucky enough that we've had a plan, you know, going into the future since the first movie. We knew at the end of the first movie, Tails would show up, you know, and that he would be the basis for the second movie. And then at the end of Sonic 2, we teased Shadow and, you know, knew that he would be basis going forward in Sonic 3. And so at the end of Sonic 2, after the success of that movie, you know, we started talking a little bit about where we can take these characters and what kind of stories we'd like to tell. And one of the things that came out of that movie was that we just really thought Idris's performance, especially in the back half of that movie, was hilarious. We loved this sort of like warrior who was misunderstanding all these key aspects of Earth. You know, the scene where he plays baseball, we loved the scene where he's excited about ice cream, you know, and we started asking ourselves, you know, could we take some of the comedy that came from that and build it into a character study just based on Knuckles? You know, and that led to a conversation with Idris Elba, who really loved working on the movie and grew up a Knuckles fan, and especially, you know, doesn't always get the chance to do comedy in the way that he did in Sonic 2 and the Knuckles series. He did a great run on The Office, which we loved, but is traditionally, you know, he's an action star. And so he was really excited about being able to do more Knuckles and tell, you know, sort of a bigger story centered on that character. And once Idris committed to doing it, you know, we got really excited about, you know, where the possibilities for the show could go. And that's how the show was created.
I love that. And I love Idris in this role. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Batista as Drax in that sort of misunderstanding things, but at the same time, you really care for them. And so I love that. And so with developing this specific story, then I love that, much like the first movie where it's Sonic finding a family, this one's about Knuckles finding a home and the human character, in this case, Wade, really, you know, coming to terms with himself and realizing the inner power within. How did you go about finding what themes you would want to explore with both Knuckles and Wade going into this story in comparison to the movies?
Well, I think we really liked the idea of telling a similar story to the first movie, in that movie is about Sonic, you know, finding a family, you know, with Knuckles, specifically because one of our favorite things about the first movie was the buddy comedy relationship between James Marsden and Sonic. That back and forth, we just had a lot of fun doing that with the two of them. And what James provides in that movie is he's kind of the straight man to Sonic, who is this wild card. And so the initial idea with Knuckles and Wade is, how would a buddy comedy work if you had two kind of crazy characters, two wild cards in a buddy comedy, and neither of them is necessarily the straight man. And so that was the impetus for how to build out the comedy. You know, we knew from Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 how talented Adam Pally was, and that he was this incredible improviser and this credible physical comedian. And we thought just the balance of putting him together with Idris, and specifically this Drax style fish out of water comedy, could create something special. And I think that allowed us to probably take more chances comedically than we have in the past two Sonic movies. Like, at least for me, I think Knuckles is the most laugh out loud, funniest version of this franchise that we've had. And in a lot of ways reminds me of some of these like 90s comedies that I grew up on, whether it's Happy Gilmore or sort of other things that live in that space.
I certainly got Kingpin vibes, and I think it's partially because of the bowling, but
Kingpin, which is a movie that I love. I feel like not a lot of people have seen, but I think is hilarious. It was the Farrelly Brothers follow-up to Dumb and Dumber. There's a really great Kingpin Easter egg in the show, which is in there for no reason other than we thought it was funny, which is there's a point where Wade and Knuckles are on the run and they find out that they're fugitives from the law, and Wade comments that they're Munsoned out here in the middle of nowhere, which is a Kingpin reference to Woody Harrelson's character Roy Munson, which is a pretty deep dive Easter egg, but we just thought it was funny, so we threw it in there.
I totally missed that one, but I love that. That is such a great little nod to it. Now, obviously, as this expands the franchise, we are introduced to a former Robotnik apprentice. We're introduced to new gun agents. And I'm curious, though, was there any talks of having other characters from the games make their way into the show? I know I've seen speculation about Rouge coming in and other people, or was this always going to be just Knuckles and Wade focused?
No, I think we talk a lot about how the different characters in the Sonic universe fit into the movie and television franchise. And I think it's about trying to find the right spots for them as we move forward. I don't think there's a character in the Sonic world that isn't being discussed right now and how they could fit into the future, which is really exciting. One of the things that we really thought was great and that we continue to talk about a lot is how the next entity in the franchise is affected from the last entity. And so, like, for example, Sonic 1 happened and there was this huge action sequence at the end of Sonic 1 in San Francisco, and half of San Francisco was destroyed. And so we really wanted to tell the story in Sonic 2 of the emergence of Gun, which is an organization that pretty much has been created because of the fact that Sonic ripped apart San Francisco. And there has to be a reaction in a grounded world to that. And so what came about in Knuckles, which is really interesting, is a further emergence of Gun. We sort of established in the first movie that Sonic's running around this planet leaving quills everywhere. And now Sonic and Knuckles have had this massive global fight in Sonic 2. And there's Echidna quills and Sonic quills all over the place. They've dropped rings all over the place. And so we loved introducing this idea that Gun, post Sonic 2, is going around and they're grabbing these things because these quills are really powerful. And these rings do things that are totally otherworldly, and that they're starting to experiment on them. And so that was one of the cool things that we really loved about the Knuckles show, is we got to build this tech within the mythology of what we built in Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. And essentially we created these mech fists that are quill powered that allows Kid Cudi to basically punch as hard as Knuckles. We have the ring gun, which allows the agents to shoot rings, and sort of capture people at their will. All of that was really interesting to us because it helped us build out the mythology of what's happening after the movie. And I think as we go forward in this franchise, it's usually the first question we ask as we're developing the movies is, if this event happened in the previous movie, what would be the consequences of that? How would the world change? It's a really fun way to develop stories on our end because, it kind of creates something that is this really, in a lot of ways, grounded, ever expanding world, and as someone who grew up as a fan of a lot of different franchises and different pieces of IP, my favorite ones were always the ones where they kind of did that, which was the comic book Marvel universe, and various things where an incident happens and then the reaction to the incident is the next story. So the fact that we get to do that kind of giant world building in the Sonic franchise is awesome.
Well, I'm really excited to see how this one bridges the gap between 2 and 3, which I know I can't talk about, so I shan't. But I see I'm almost out of time, so my final question is, the scope and scale of this actually feels like it really does match the movie as far as the action set pieces, the comedy, the visual effects and everything. And, sometimes you don't get that from a TV companion to a film franchise. And so I'm curious, what was it like from the production side of things, working to ensure that you were matching everything of that level to the movies.
Well, it was paramount that was the goal from the very beginning. We did not want to do anything that reduced the quality of the product that we were making. And so we actually shot Knuckles and Sonic 3 back to back. So it was two productions that really was one giant production. And so all the crew, all the directors led by the incredible Jeff Fowler, everyone who's involved in Sonic 3 was also involved in Knuckles. And that meant that the animation and the VFX looks exactly the same between Knuckles and Sonic 3. We kind of look at it as the ultimate Easter egg. Sonic 3, the video game, had the little Knuckles add-on. And this year, Sonic fans get to have both a Knuckles TV show and a Sonic 3. And the Knuckles TV show is kind of like a gift to our fans. It's a big, giant extra movie. From a technical standpoint, it actually has 300 more VFX shots than the first Sonic movie. So it's bigger in scope than Sonic 1. And really, we didn't take anything. We didn't cut any corners in the animation at all. So it looks and feels like the movies in every way across the board. And we're incredibly proud that we were able to do that, within the confines of television.
Well, I'm glad that Paramount gave you that opportunity to do so, because like I said, I was so enamored with this show, and I think so many Sonic fans like myself are going to be. So I really can't wait to spread the word about it and get it out there, and hopefully see what comes next for this franchise. Hopefully more like Tales.
You guys at Screen Rant do a great job covering us. What you should know about the producers behind it is we read a lot. We're on Twitter, we're on Reddit. We try and make something that works for the fan base, and they're really important to us. I think the Screen Rant team does an incredible job covering what we're doing. I also really like the pitch meetings that you guys do. I think they're really funny.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And I'll be sure to pass that along to everybody. I know they'll love to hear that. But thank you so much for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it. And again, I really, really can't wait to get the word out there about this show.
Of course. Thanks, Grant. It's great to see you.
Absolutely.